Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about what is a reducer function. Well, this right here, this is the basics of what a reducer function is. It's a pure function that takes two arguments. State, which is going to be some value or some object that you have, something that you're using in your application, some information, and an action to say, I'm carrying out this action. And it's going to return some new version of state, or the original state. So how does this work? Well, I'm going to take a simple little example here. We're going to work with a primitive value. For our state, we're going to say it's just a string. So let's say that my string is this. And I'm going to call the reducer function, and I'm going to tell it, based on some parameter, I'm going to say my action is the word darken. So we're going to call reducer, and we're going to pass in dark, and we're going to pass in this string. This is my action. I want to pass this in, and based upon that, if action is darken, then I'm going to do something. Now we could return the same thing regardless of whether or not we're talking about the action being darken. But usually it means that you're going to make some change. So I'm going to take whatever the current value is, and I'm going to add this to the end of it. Now, whenever I call this function, I'm going to pass in some current value. With this action, it's going to just append ER onto the end of it. And that's going to be my new value. So dark is now going to be darker. If I call it again, darker-er, darker-er, and so on. So we could call it a few times, and then I will write out the value of dark at this point. We know here it's dark. Here it's going to be dark with 3 ers added on to the end. So let's run it. There we go. Dark, So we've called it 3 times. After the first time, it's just going to be darker. But after the 3 calls, it's that. So that, in a nutshell, is a reducer. You pass in some value, and then based on whatever this parameter is, you're going to carry out certain actions. There could be another one in here. We could say if action is lighten. Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to take state, and I'm going to remove the first instance of with an empty string. So I'm going to strip off one of the ers. Down here, if I were to call lighten or use lighten as my action, then the result is going to be back to the original. Darker and then dark. So we called darken once, it became darker. We called lighten twice. First time, it stripped this off. The second time, it went to do it again, but there was no other ER for it to remove. But that's okay. It still works. It's still taking that original state value and changing it. So this is the process where things like state management inside of React and Redux, this is how they work. They use reducers. So when you're calling set state, what you're trying to do is you're trying to modify some object based on some condition. Now, I've done a video before on state management engine. The video is called Finite State Machines. And so there's a link to that up at the top there if you want to see this in action being used in a little bit more complex situation. So I'm just going to comment this out. And we're going to do something a little bit more complex using an object. If you got that, if you understood the whole thing, you're good at this point. If you want to see something that's a little bit more realistic, a little bit more lifelike, then we're going to do that right now. So we're going to create our reducer function. It doesn't have to be called reducer, just That's to get the name into your head. We're passing in state, we're passing in an action into our function, and you can do if statements, you can do switch case statements. There's a bunch of ways, whatever operator you want to use. I'm going to look at the action, and if the case is darken, I'm going to do something. And then if the case is lighten, I'm going to do something. In here, I'm going to check some other parameters. So action, we're just passing in a single string here, but we can actually make this a little bit more complex. We can look at the action object, and then we can look at a property inside of it. This is often what happens with the more complex actions. The action that gets passed in will have a bunch of things inside of it, potentially. My state object, I'm going to here define my state object instead of just a single string. Maybe there's a bunch of stuff inside of here. So I've got a property called agent. I've got a bunch of properties. Turtleneck type, turtleneck blackness. And then my action, well, I can have other properties inside of here. Like I said up here, we can have the type. We could have other properties as well. Maybe the action requires some other things. But when we call our function, we're going to call our reducer, and we're going to pass in our state object, and we're going to pass in our action. The action could have a type, like this. So we're passing in that extra information here. Sometimes there's other properties as well. I just wanted to do a simple one that shows that you could do this. Now, what we're going to get back from the reducer is the new version of our state. And that means up here, we're going to have to be returning something. Now, maybe there's additional things that are going to take place inside of here. Maybe there's additional tests that are going to take place. So I'm going to look at the turtleneck type. I'm going to look at the agent. We can do things like that inside of here to say if state dot agent is Archer, so we're going to check these two properties to make sure that this is the case. There could be additional if statements inside of here. Maybe this is another case that takes place. Something like that. Then, what we want to do is really, we want to create a brand new object, a new state object coming back from here. We still need to do a return. I'm just going to return state from here just to have something in it. And let's say it's the same here, but we're going to change it if we meet these two conditions. What I want to do is I'm going to return a brand new object. I'm going to take whatever was inside of state. So down here, these properties. This, we're creating basically a new copy of this right here. So we've said that there's an object which has a property called agent, a property called turtleneck type, and turtleneck blackness. Those three properties are there. And then if I add additional ones afterwards, the way JavaScript works is it overwrites the previous values. So the one that I want to change is this one right here, the turtleneck blackness. So we're going to put this inside of here, and we're going to say we're going to add 10 to that value. Oh, sorry, that's the property name, and it's going to be that plus 10. So we start with the original object, we're making a brand new object, we're splitting out all these properties, and then we're overwriting this property with this new value right here. Okay, so let's test this out. Down here, we've got, this is the original state, and if I write out my new version, state has been overwritten now by the reducer function. Oh, what do I do? Yes, that should be state dot. Just like here, state dot turtleneck type. Not here. There we go. It's just in the value. So this is the new property name. This will overwrite the property name inside of state. And then we're getting the value of state.turtleneck blackness that was passed in. We're adding 10 to that value and assigning it to this property, which is going to overwrite the one that we have inside of here. There we go. Let's try this again. There we go. So we have the new value, agent turtleneck type, and blackness, Archer Tactical 100, and now it's 110. Had we called it 3 times, 130. That's the new value. Okay, and if you're looking for some context, if you don't follow Archer at all, I have a couple links to YouTube videos up here at the top. You can watch that for 30 seconds and see what I'm talking about with the turtleneck darkness. Okay, so that is what a reducer function is. It is simply a function that takes in 2 parameters. One, which is some state value, some primitive or object or array, whatever it is that you want, some data, and an action. This controls what I'm going to do. And I'm saying, okay, if the type is this string, this is what I want to do. If it's this string, this is what I want to do. And we can, at the very end, just return the original. So if there were no changes, if there were no matches for the value passed in for the action, you're just giving back the original object. All right, so I hope that helps you out. If you want a little bit more information, like I said, that other video that I made about the finite state engines will help you understand this a little bit more as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.